Okay, we might get started now. It is 5:30, so if elected members would like to take their seats, that would be appreciated. And if we start with country and the like to acknowledge.
Gratefully acknowledge the Navy, Army, and made the supreme sacrifice of Australia's freedom. Proclaim.
Welcome everybody, and welcome those in the gallery and those maybe listening at our stream. We do have a couple of apologies. Camp and if we done some planning and workshops around the budget. This council meeting, the budget, if that council would like to do, so that it can go out to community consultation for your input as community. That will be guided by our community engagement. So the first recommendation is that council receive and note draft annual. Thank you. Move that way, Councillor Schofield, and seconded by. Do either of you want to? Receiving and noting the report. Speaking to that, Councillor Roberts. This is just receiving and noting the report. If you've got questions specifically about the business plan and budget that are provided separate cover, detailing the capital expenditure and the operating deficit, it's probably best that you ask that in the second recommendation. Does anybody have anything they would like to say in relation to receiving a note? If not, favour? Against? The second recommendation is that council endorse the business plan and budget provided under the separate cover, detailing net capital expenditure and operating deficit for the purposes of going out to a public consultation, which would commence on the 19th May to Monday the 30th of June, and provided by our communication. That way, council. Seconder for that. Schofield. Does anybody want to speak to that? You had some, Councillor Robert.
Yep. Just on the page 12 of the engagement. Engagement matrix on page 12 doesn't have any separate list of engagements for the non-resident ratepayers. Is that?
Thank you, through the Mayor. So we do have listed the first column, the City of Victor Harbor residents and ratepayers. So that would basically include the non-resident ratepayers, and we're still looking at ways that we can Similar, last year, we actually had opportunity with another consultation that was happening at the same. So we're working through, but they are included.
Okay, but there's, only a month to go until we close the. Okay. Yeah.
Can I just ask Kelly a question in relation to what, councillor? I think last year we had a public meeting in relation to. Are you still planning on doing like that?
And we haven't or anything in that regard. The reason we were at that last year, I believe, car park happening at the same time. There was merit
Arts
in
and
having
Culture Centre.
Arts and Culture Centre. Sorry. So there was merit in having staff down there. I guess it's difficult to find one particular place that people to do, considering our not. But definitely, it is particularly in action service, how we can engage. We will.
Yes, another question was, because we've got, budget for this dollars. And, list of notices normally a paper ad and page or that, and they normally other activity. Had this discussion before. Enough time. A mayor question, Kelly, is there is more in over in the budget. Going to cut it.
Through the mayor, so the 1,500 that we've quoted advertised, where it's consultation where we elsewhere we may have some if we're at a shopping mall type experience, but staff time is not cost for the 15 advertised, and that's based on what not included.
Because if I might add to that, the staff time is going to be particularly critical this year. Seem to be being particularly vulnerable to COVID disruptions. Anyway, $1,500 is what.
In terms of the amount that we need to pay credit, yes. So the staff costs are not included.
If we hire,
It may potentially not be enough, but like you've said, there is addition in that line that will work really well. We believe based on.
I might turn to the page 7, the last dot right-hand column, placing the council's court. I think that this is true in part. I think it should be saying something like this is that the be a little bit different. going to be purchase of done in yeah, on the nothing mentioned in the, about the health centre. If page mention town plan. I think it refers page yeah, there's this year there's proposed to be one staff time full planner going in. Because this year's staff equivalent, the planner isn't mentioned either in, but where it describes the
Like Kelly to answer.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Just before I get too long a list and forget something. So in terms of the Whale Centre, the new Victor Harbour Visitor Centre incorporates the Whale Centre. So it's actually within our activity area now called the Victor Harbour Visitor, as per the name endorsed. So that is within the document, I think it's tourism. In regards to the core system, reference on page 7 is essentially the message from the CEO. There's more information where about it being a key planned activities and being a year 2 program, essentially. In regards to town planning, that table, 19, it mentions in there 1 FTE development officer. So that's that planning position that referring to there.
Any further comment?
oh,
Does anybody else have any? Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Without the session, you missed out the figures of capital expenditure of 9,326,000, deficit of 649,600, which I find deficit grown. I'll go through the document, but I think there are some areas of maybe misleading statements. On page 19, we're talking about the debt levels. All we've got in here is that term loan, do you have any cash or variable loan?
Through the Mayor, yes, we do. What that exactly looks like depends on payment and cash flow side. So what we've included in here is information that as at the 23rd of March, so when we've put together, there was 700,000 outstanding on our cash advance debentures, and that we're expecting total borrowings, including both fixed term and cash advance debentures, be approximately $11 million by
So currently at the moment, the last time I asked a question on what compared to 14.
No, that's incorrect. So at the moment, we have $7 million standing in fixed term loans. I would have to look at what we have on our cash advance at this point in time, but that fluctuates during the month. We would be expecting, if we had taken out cash advance debentures, we would be expecting to pay down when we get. And so that would reduce the amount at the end of the financial year. And then we would use those as cash flow required throughout the year, paying them down and drawing for creditors, payroll, etc., and to pay for capital projects. And we would be expecting at the end of the year to have approximately $11 million outstanding. Made up of the fact that the fixed term loans, there are 2 that will actually mature in June. And we will have that fourth quarter setting us up following financial.
Okay, thank you. Question on the $13 million cash advance. Generally speaking, in finances, that when you can access that amount of money, it seems that you borrow up to 30 million very quickly. So pay interest on the money you borrow, but effect of how much debt you could. Should we not include that 13 million because borrow against that debt will be huge? Should we not calculate that into our situation where we're looking at our debt levels, state revenue? At the moment, you're saying under our system that, you know, we're going to be around ratio. We're really, I guess, but if you could just answer that question, 13 million that Steve, that we do have a 30, if we use, so we should count it into our.
Through the Mayor, not under the accounting standards for us as an entity. So in terms of whilst the money is available there, it is not outstanding at any given, unless there is money actually outstanding on it at any given time. We're only required to pay interest on it if there is an outstanding balance, and the interest is only on the amount of the outstanding balance at the time that the interest is calculated. So whilst it is a facility sitting there that we can access, it's basically secured by our ability to raise rates up to a certain value, and doesn't come into play unless it's actually utilised. We don't have to have it on the financial statements in terms of having a liability, although we do mention in the financial statements how much we are able to access if it's not considered a liability under accounting.
Thank you. On page 36 under town planning, we make reference here to council development plan. I thought with the new building codes, we don't. Is that correct statement in that?
Through the Mayor, yes, that is correct. That probably design code placed.
On page 38, I'm looking at arts and culture design statement under capital. Got $300,000 there for the DDA and building code compliance. So I was under the impression that we'll go to do the development application.
Through the Mayor, the development applications this financial year still progressing into next financial year, but the financial commitment for the development applications this budget bid has showed a stage 1 design, arts and culture, detailed design and specification to require stage 1 being the upgrade and the compliance that around accessibility.
Thank you. Page 40, the corporate services, information technology, our ROSE program. I believe that the somewhere, somehow, I'm not quite sure, I can't find it, a resolution where we actually approve the software product that we're my understanding of this project was that the first year was research, employed certain people like in Budwick to do a business analysis, project managers at research and look at what systems are out there that best suit our needs. But now we seem to have made a decision and done a contract on a software which I don't believe is. I can't find a resolution that said that we will do.
Thank you through the Mayor. So I did get your query from Pauline today and I have responded, albeit a bit late today for you to probably have seen it. So the response that I've provided is that Council actually approved the project in a high-level budget at a meeting held, there was a special council meeting in July 2021, and that enabled us to proceed with the system review and replacement. We did an open expression of interest firstly with an evaluation phase, a project advisory group that were key stakeholders from the organisation and a procurement consultant that assisted with that as well. Following that process, there was a request for tender, which was issued to 2 shortlisted companies, who then provided their tenders and an evaluation process was carried out against the assessment matrix. The process complied with Council's endorsed procurement policy, which details the procurement thresholds and authorisation requirements. And the selected software scored the highest in the assessment matrix and was within the approved budget. So therefore, the Chief Executive Officer had the ability to sign the contract and we didn't need another formal action of Council.
Thank you, Kelly. Could you just please refresh my memory? And where were the chamber updated on that in chamber?
Through the Mayor, so there are a number of memos, I believe, and I'd have to check the dates of each of those. I believe a number of them have been forwarded from Karen to elected members in regards to a couple of these questions, but it was also put in the elected member weekly update once the decision was made and went out to staff the following Monday as well in the same update. So there's been a couple of memos that have come through around the process, and then there was one that notified elected members in the update. I believe that was the place it was in, because that, I'd have to check the exact wording, but I believe that's the case.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Next query. Page 28, roads, footpath and bridges. We're talking about the Keene Road Bridge. Again, to me, I feel this is a false or misleading statement due to a consultant report that we've just seen recently. Said the bridge has a 10-year life expectancy, 2032, but the statement in the plan says replacing the Keene Road Bridge, which has reached the end of its life. Consultant's report 2032. We don't really need to replace it now. So that is me a blur of that area there. Whether that can be changed.
Through the Mayor, yes, we can update that. Essentially what we try to do is pull together commentary within a lot of information. So sometimes, yes, we do need to update that following that last discussion.
Thank you. And just a query on uniform presentation of finances. Now, we're saying that at the end of 30th June, we have $11 million debt, but in the 22-23 statement of financial institutions on page 65, our total liabilities would be 19. So could you get variation there, please?
Through the Mayor, so are we talking the statement of financial position on page 65?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So within that report, it basically details that in borrowings under non-current liabilities, $11.5 million in borrowings, and in current liabilities borrowings is $330,000. So essentially what we're saying there is around $12 million in borrowings at the end of the financial year. The reason why we have included that we believe it will be around $11 million statement of financial as essentially everything to have been finished and paid for to give the position at the end of the financial. And we know that there are a number that are WIP projects or will be WIP projects depending on materials. And so we've done some cash flow analysis behind the scenes to have a look at what that actually looks like. So the borrowing's 330,000, borrowing's 11 is just under $12 million with some adjustment for.
So with our total liabilities then, this is what we're faced with here, rate revenue of 20 million. I know we look at debt ratio, but surely that will be about 74% of our rate revenue coming out of total liability.
Through the Mayor, so no, I mean, the statement of financial position basically shows our assets and liabilities at a set date. It doesn't necessarily infer when they're due or when they need to be paid. So this amount doesn't essentially have any major impact on the statement of comprehensive income, except for the difference in the levels from the previous year. So essentially we have a statement of financial position, say at the 1st of July, and then the statement of position at the end of June. The difference between that for each of the items within the statement of financial position statement will be reflected in the profit and loss, but it's only the change between those levels that is reflected in the profit and loss, and they're already reflected in the statements that are before. The $19 million in total liabilities also include provisions. So that would include provisions for the essentially staff leave entitlements, long service leave, any provisions for any of the subsidiaries where we have, or landfill provisions that we have in place, as well as trade and other payables that are due, expected to be paid after the 30th of June, essentially, but we're saying they could potentially be on the books. So that's the only essentially dollar figure within those liabilities that has a real and short-term cash flow impact.
Thank you very much, Kelly. The other one with the financial indicators, I'm not going to support us going out to public consultation because look at our financial indicators. I think this budget annual plan is really putting a burden on our community, considering the current situation we're in. I think we should present our community with a lesser budget of expenditure. In our operating surplus ratio is -2, which is right down the lower end of the target. Our net financial liabilities from 56%, which is great in that context, but it went from 74 down to 56 because of various reasons around stopping projects. So, area, but the asset renewal funding ratio is 150, way above our targets. I just feel that we're over-committing. I think we may be exceeding our capacity in delivering this budget, especially with a $600,000 deficit. I just feel that just too high, it's too big for our community, considering when you're looking at the current CPI around about 5%. Yes, I know the rate increase is only 4.7 underneath the CPI, which is great in that context. But the issue is that everything's the community is suffering. It's COVID after 2 years. They're still facing higher issues around interest rates and mortgages, cost of living going up, fuel going up. And here we are, we go to hit them with. I think we shouldn't be sending it out until we down and reduce some expenditure. Could forgo, for example, those new employees that will save $500,000 deficit down. And most probably there's other areas we could look at this year. It only takes 1 year to sort of set ourselves. Yeah, I think that's what we should be doing during the climate we're in.
Just ask a question, Kelly. Just getting back to the question I asked you before the meeting in relation So this recommendation has a net capital expenditure. That's 9.3 plus grant funding. Actual capital expenditure is
Through the Mayor, yes. So I had a quick look at that. So originally what went to the audit committee, the capital expenditure was 14.1 million. It's now 14.8, I think it is. And the increase in that was the council resolution around Main Street Stage 4 at the last meeting. So that's what that increase is around that soil.
Thank you. I was wondering, for me, that's leading to have like that. Or would a total capital expenditure?
Through the Mayor, we have provided it that way historically because what it does, it provides the net capital expenditure and then your deficit, which is your net operating. So it's just to keep them looking at the net result essentially for both capital and operating budget. There's no reason why it can't have it spelled out further as in capital expenditure. What that does is just basically combines the income and the expenditure together for the ease of the council recommendation, but there's no reason it can't say the actual figures.
Oh, well, that's your decision, I suppose, as long as members not. Fairly
Ambitious?
ambitious. Thank you very much. That's a very yeah, I seem to recall from the audit committee meeting. I mean, I know they had changes, and that's there was talk of the rate increase was 3.7% was well below. I sort of felt that there was a bit of conversation as well. I don't seem to think that that's been
Through the Mayor, so it has been primarily addressed through the operating statement with an increase. At the time it was presented to Audit Committee, the been drafted still using the RBA's forecast for CPI, but then the March figures came out after the agenda had been built. So the March figures of 4.7, which were discussed in the Audit Committee, we have made that adjustment to revenue and then also gone through rating, particularly in regards to materials and contracted supply, and made adjustments to those. So whilst the overall deficit position hasn't moved much, there's been an increase in both revenue and expenditure in the operating. In regards to capital, we had already done some work around increasing the value of the projects based on what we knew when we came to council at I think it was the second workshop. But in regards to capacity, we're led by the staff and what they can fit in and what jobs are being contracted out and how many staff hours we have to distribute across the whole project base. And so I do think ambitious is the right word, but without knowing more details, this is what we're saying that can be in the budget without any other information. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that because I don't have so many people.
Thanks. Through the Mayor. Thank you, Kelly. I agree with you, Councillor Glasbrook. Ambitious is the right word, especially in these in the current climate. We know, which is as Kelly said, that we've reviewed the costs of those projects and upped those projects. We've allocated, and I think we went through one of the workshops, down to the hours in the week. All of our staff members and what they'll be working on. But of course, we don't know this dynamic environment if that's going to play out how we think it will at this point. But it is ambitious, but we have worked it out at this stage with the hour and we've recosted them. So I can't 100% guarantee that we can do it. I don't know either. There's so many variables at the moment, but it's what we know at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, just to add a few, I guess around Councillor Kemp's statements around that asset renewal funding ratio, and yes, it is higher this year, but that is across of aiming for, and when you take into account how it's years previously, 2 years ago, in 97 point. So I guess if you're looking at that bit, we are due for, and especially if we're looking at what our long-term financial plan says and deliver projects that are new, is our recreation centre and a community facility. So I think it is, we don't look at that in isolation, but holistically across previous years and also future years to come. So I think it is better that we are investing in our renewals, and it is great that we have that higher this year. I think as well, there's a lot through these discussions that we've had extensively around this process and creating this budget. Just to name the valuation of property, 20% listed in the, is how over 70% of affected properties had greater than 15%, and how we've had to reduce that to reduce how our rating policy is around accounting for that. With CPI, we've got, it's all well and good to say budget's too big, our operating deficit's too big, we need to bring that in line or reduce those rates for our community. But when it comes to CPI and it comes to, council doesn't exist by itself in its own little world, but in the current world we're in, which is one where we've got inflation, where a lot of people are struggling and costs of everything is going up. So it's either we don't go up with CPI and we go against what our audit committee is recommending, and then we either have a bigger increase in future years or cut back on existing services. And I think the comments made by Councillor are good points around how ambitious we are being, and potentially there is that scope to reduce that, because we know that hours are lost with staff capacity in terms of COVID and isolation and a lot of factors that we can't predict. So I think I'm supportive of going out for consultation based on this budget, but I think, and I'll be especially keen on the feedback from projects might not be as important to them, or which projects they would prefer to defer, or where though, or which ones are more important than they don't want to. Because I guess if we take into account, and I definitely agree with Councillor sentiment about after our community, we want to do that. That just means we've got to find what we remove that also angers the community. So balancing those two things, I think it's important we go out to consultation at this point after extensive discussions and meetings that we've had, to then inform what we do, what projects we might defer, what projects we might go ahead with. So that's my view on.
Do you have a question, Councillor Glasbrook?
I do have a question. It's in relation to that asset renewal ratio, 150%. Predominantly that is due from WIP, is that correct? Assets aren't valued until they're completed.
Through the Mayor, yes. So there'd be two components within that. One would be the increase in the costs of doing those works, but that is the minor component of that increase. I think across the 3 years, we end up with 102%, including what we forecast for the next year, this year, and what last year was. So it's 2% higher than the council's 100% rolling 3-year average. If we're aiming for that 150%, which is also something that the independents of the audit committee were expecting to see us make up some ground within that ratio at some point in time, once that WIP, basically those larger projects got through and got.
Sorry, just to add to that, do you know what the percentage would be without the WIP?
Through the mayor, no, not off the top of my head. I'd have to take all of those out and then recalculate.
Councillor Henderson, would you?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've listened to all the discussion and I just want to finish the debate by saying we have had many workshops and many discussions about the budget over at least a 6-month period. And I believe we have pared this budget right down. We've made lots of changes along the way and pared it down as much as I think we possibly can to still progress many of our projects that have been in the planning for quite some time. With regards to the capacity to carry out this budget, I think.
Councillor Henderson, I'm being distracted. Do you mind, Mr. Charles, just not talking at the moment while we're doing the debate? It's just distracting. Yeah, and I'm finding it distracting. So please don't carry on. Thank you. No, that's all right. You don't need to explain. You don't need to explain. Councillor Henderson, please carry on.
In terms of capacity, I think similar questions were asked in this chamber last year about our capacity to carry out our budget. And I believe we have carried out the current year's budget very well, in spite of difficulties which we weren't able to foresee at the beginning of that financial year. I think this council has coped very well with our projects and our planning. And I think we need to keep in mind that if the budget and business plan are delayed, we then risk the possibility of heading into the financial year without a budget, as we did last year. And that, in fact, has a real cost to our community and to our ratepayers. And we need to keep that in mind as well. So if we're to look after our community, we don't want to cost them in what's the equivalent of dead money for not having a budget at all to operate with into the next financial year. So I think we do need to take this out to our community and wait for their feedback and see where we go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. That closes the debate. So we have that recommendation that the annual business plan and budget go to community consultation. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Call a division. Thank you.
Certainly. All those in favour? We have Councillor Mann. Oh, sorry, I'll just wait for you, Karina. Councillor Mann. Councillor Robertson. Councillor Henderson. And Councillor Schofield. And against, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Glasbrook. That motion's carried. Thank you very much. And I think there was some really good discussion there, and it will be, I'm really looking forward to hearing what the community says and looking at whether they want to defer any projects, what projects they want to continue, what services they may want to cut if they do want to reduce spending. And the budget as presented, I think we've had 3 workshops, major workshops. We've gone through the budget line by line to get where we are today. And so now it's up to the community to look at how they would like to mould it. So we now come to item 4.2, which is the Main Street Stage 4 Esplanade car park permits, and this is part of us being able to help the business community during the Main Street Stage 4 upgrade that we talked about at the last meeting. So I will do that recommendation en bloc. The council receiving and noting the car park permit report, and also the council endorsing issuing traders and contractors with parking permits free of charge for the duration of the Main Street Stage 4 construction works. You're moving that way, Councillor Glasbrook?
No, I wanted to ask a question. I may have wished to move a different motion.
What is the different motion that you want to move?
Well, it depended on what the answer to my question was. I'm considering whether it's worth all of this, or should we just not charge anybody to use that car park for this period of time? If that would be, that would sound a lot simpler and easier to me, but
Would you foreshadow a alternative motion if that second one is lost?
it hasn't been moved yet.
No, that's true.
I would like, well, I don't want to move that question unless I don't know, I need to know the answer of that question. So could we do them individually?
We can do them individually.
think that
So
might
the
be the
first
easiest way.
recommendation is receiving and noting the report. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Mann, thank you, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Do either of you want to speak to the report? Councillor Glasbrook?
I will speak to the report. In the report, it mentions $16,000 of costs. I don't quite understand where that all comes from or how that's, how you come up with that figure. I wonder whether by the time you have one of your staff members sending out emails or whatever to all of the businesses and then filling out an application form and then sending them back an approval that they can park their car there and whatever else, if we're wanting to help the traders in the main street, there was one advantage would be, of course, to let them have free parking. The other advantage would be to have members of the community or whomever who want to service those businesses to park for free in that area without having to walk too far. So, but if it's going to cost $16,000, well, I just was curious as to why that is.
Kelly?
Through the Mayor, one of the considerations in regards to what come forward, and that was one of the considerations around just making it free for everybody, was that if we can attribute a cost directly to the project, we can capitalise that, and the operating income for council doesn't necessarily become diminished. Whereas if we were looking at having that car park free, essentially for everybody for that period, the budget, the income budget would need to be reduced in our operating budget. At the moment, we would be offsetting that by an internal transfer between the operating income and the capital job itself. So the 16,000 was worked out based on the amount of traders or businesses that we would be expecting to provide essentially a business permit to. And so that's where those dollars come from. So I hope that answers that.
Thank you. I've obviously been here for way too long, so I knew you were going to say that. So is that $16,000 a real figure? Then it's not going to cost $16,000.
So through the Mayor, so no, it doesn't necessarily cost in terms of cash. It is a journal between our operating and our capital budget, but it is a cost to the project and a cost in terms of potential loss of income for council by cars taking up those spaces that would otherwise be paid for by members of the public. So the actual gap between those two amounts, we don't know, but this basically is working on that there's a business permit for each trader, and they could potentially have at least one car using that permit on any given day.
Okay. Well,
So we're going still with the first
Okay, sorry.
recommendation,
Thank you.
receiving and noting it. Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting it? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Glasbrook, have you got an alternative motion you want to put?
Well, I think I will. I'll move that we just make the car park free of charge for that period of time. Although I would probably prefer us to maybe put a date, as in the mid of December, something like that, rather than the whole period, because the period could go away into perhaps January if they're still planting a few plants or something, technically.
So Kelly's just jotting a motion, which she'll read out for Karina, so we can move on your alternative motion, and then if that doesn't pass, then we'll go to recommendation 2.
Yeah.
Through the Mayor, so just adding to what I had said before, in terms of real money going down that path, we're talking around $46,000 in lost income that we think council would incur. So the cost of providing the permits would be $16,000 to the capital, but if we left it open for anybody to use free of charge, potentially there's around $46,000 in loss of income for council over that period, which that's council's prerogative and may assist. In terms of the alternative motion, if you wanted to go with this, we just need to change it to that council endorses essentially the Esplanade car park to be free of charge for the period of the Main Street Stage 4 construction works, and whether there's a date that we can put in that, we could do that.
Let me just check the motion so we're clear with the motion before I get a seconder, Councillor Robertson. Can we just get the motion clear, because otherwise we might lose it? So that,
Yeah, I'd
Corinne,
be
have
happy
you
with
got that?
I would like a date. Mid-December, I think would be appropriate, or towards the end, certainly before Christmas.
Can you suggest a date?
For safety, perhaps we could just go 30 May, which is the start, until 24 December. I mean, we could look at, hang on, just look at the calendar just to see what it's a Saturday.
Okay. So I'm surprised that figure is so high, 24,000, but you haven't allowed anything for the cost of permits, for the issuing of permits, which would be some cost. But anyway, I'm prepared to put the motion, and if it doesn't go through, well, that's fine.
So you move that. Do I have a seconder for that motion? If that motion doesn't have a seconder, it will lapse for want of a seconder. You're happy to second that, Councillor Robertson? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Robertson. And you wanted to speak? You had a question. Councillor Robertson had a question. Do you want to speak to it? Okay, all right. Speak to it first, and then I'll ask Councillor Robertson his question.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm surprised it was that much money, but I still think, we're looking at supporting our businesses through this period, and I believe this is a way that we can support our businesses. It gives, patrons the opportunity to park, as I say, somewhere close and free. It helps the businesses out. Potentially that whole figure could be capitalised. I'm not sure. That won't work that way. No. Anyway, I'd like to put it. I think it's something we can do to help the people down there. So see what happens.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Robertson, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. This thing to me just doesn't add up. There's 180 car parks in the Esplanade. According to the data we've been given in this report, there are 33 parks given to the people doing the causeway construction, and I presume that means the people also doing that will go on to do the upgrade of the screw pile jetty. So that's to the end of August. 33 parks there. Then there's 13 car parks that are with the annual licenses. Then there are 160 parks required, some of which I think I've forgotten how many are being requested by the actual tradespeople that are doing the stage 4. There just isn't any parking left over when you take away what is being given. And to me, this business is doing nothing for the losses that are going to be sustained by the Main Street traders. I mean, I appreciate that, giving them free car parks, but then if you have all the workers from the traders going over to park in the Esplanade, plus all the others we're giving away to various construction companies, there's nothing left for the public that wants to go into the Main Street to buy things. And to me, we have just taken an attitude in this council of the pain that's going to be absorbed by the Main Street traders in relation to this work that's being so-called accelerated. And we're not doing anything. No one's mentioned anything about foregoing rates or something that's meaningful to cash flow for the people in the Main Street, giving away car parks that some of which won't be there. So to me, this is doing nothing, given all what's being left over for the customers of the people in the in that area. And this will further drive away people from coming there to patronise that area, because what's the point? Can't get a car park there. So to me, this has been, the maths on this just don't add up. Secondly, I haven't found out from this council what is the date that is going to be, because someone up there mentioned that, 24th of December. Sure, that's a Saturday, that's Christmas Eve. And if we're still constructing this main street on Christmas Eve, then Christmas trading is dead. And I still don't know. No one's told, there's nothing in writing which says when is this contract that's been signed or is about to be signed, when is the end date for the to say, okay, this is done. And we have this rubbery figures, like, it could be up to 24th of December. Well, good luck with that. For trading, for those people who have an income that come out of their premises in the main street. And car parks help, that's for sure, but not if there's no car parks left, and that's what'll happen, because we've given away so many of those car parks to.
You have 1 minute left, Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, we've given away so many of those to the causeway contractors, to the contractors who are doing the Main Street 4 upgrade, and 13 annual licenses, so on. So, yeah, and I agree totally with Councillor Crasbrook. What's the point of putting in place a parking scheme which is going to cost us more in terms of council staff time than it is in terms of the benefits of any revenue that might come from losses of revenue. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just a question to administration. Could we capitalise the cost of providing parking permits to all of our residents, where we might not necessarily provide them with physical parking permit?
Through the Mayor, that would be difficult to justify in terms of capital costs with auditors. So we need to be able to demonstrate that anything such as permits were directly attributable to do with something with the construction. People losing parking spaces and things like that, it's a direct result of doing the construction. So it's easy for us to be able to show that linkage, providing either permits for all residents or an open car park, a free of charge car park. We won't be able to capitalise that. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing. So, but we need to be reasonably careful when we're looking at costs that we capitalise, that we can demonstrate that it's attributed to the project itself. So it'd be difficult to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Henderson.
I'll not be supporting this alternative motion. We've just talked about paring down our budget, and now we're talking about the potential of giving away basically $45,000 worth of income. And I think you'll find, my observation at least, is that the people who use that paid car park are mainly visitors to the town, and they are quite happy to pay to park there. And it's a convenient place for them to park, and they look at it as part of their travel expenses when going on holiday. And I know I take the same attitude if I'm travelling elsewhere. I'm happy to pay for parking to go and see the tourist attractions. So I don't think you'll find that our ratepayers are going to be paying to park there. The local people know where to park for free, and they'll continue to do that, even with the roadworks in the main street.
Are there any further comments? Councillor Schofield.
Yes, I've had I've been listening to what's being said. I too just wonder where we're coming from when we're talking about budgets and costs, and all of a sudden this is a $46,000 debt to us or a loss of income. I understand the need for our traders, and I think that's a good idea. I mean, quite often the parking meters down there don't work, and that's on a fairly regular basis. But I'm also wondering whether the land on the Esplanade that people do park on, whether that can also, we could look at that as alternative parking during this particular time and let our local people know it's only a 2 or 3 minute walk from the main street. I'm finding it very difficult to actually support the motion that's on the floor at the moment, given the discussions we've had in the chamber this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Glasbrook, is there any further questions or debate? Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Glasbrook can close the debate.
I applaud Councillor Glasbrook trying to find a new way, a new incentive of finding some solutions to the problem we have facing us. But again, it's about finances. It's also about practicability. I'm not quite sure it would work with this because, excuse me, you said there's one car park. Sorry, this is the other motion. What I'm thinking is that we don't know when the stage 4 will finish, and we don't know what weather events may delays. We don't know what's going to happen until December, and I will be surprised if we actually do get it finished by then. So having a free car park could impact greater than we think at this stage, not just the random figure of 46,000 roughly. I think there's going to be a greater impact than that. So I can't support a free car park for everybody at this stage.
Thank you. I think given that both you and Councillor Robertson have raised the issue about when it's going to finish, I know that we've had several communications around that, and Jody was quite explicit in terms of the major works finishing, I think, by the end of September, and in December there'll just be the plantings and the minor works being done. But I might just ask Kathy if she can clarify for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So we're currently finalising the schedule with outside ideas. At this stage, we're looking with contingencies to complete mid-December. But as you say, Councillor Kemp, who knows what we don't know, but we are aiming fairly and squarely for mid-December completion.
Thank you. Councillor Glasbrook, would you like to close the debate?
Oh, look, I will just quickly. I question that $46,000 figure, because as Councillor Robinson has said quite clearly in here, it says that it's estimated that approximately 120 permits would be used at any one time. Is that correct? So if there's only 180 car parks and 120 of them are going to be already permitted out, that's 60 car parks. How is 60 car parks over that period of time going to cost $46,000? Doesn't seem to make any sense to me. But
Mark, can you respond to that?
So through the Mayor, what we've done is we've modelled the last 4 financial years and the average takings on that car park. Between June and December, that works out to be on average, based on the averages for each month, $46,150. That's actually collected in revenue from the ticket machines that are on the foreshore car park. Happy to share the spreadsheet. That includes a permit cost. There's also permits for the businesses adjacent to the foreshore area that pay a permit fee of $200 a year, I think is in the order of. So that's a cost. If we're going to waive the fees for the use of the car park, that would need to be waived as well to be fair. I tend to agree with Councillor Henderson's observation is that there are a lot of people, visitors that actually park in that car, not actually locals that park in that car park generally. A lot of visitors park in that car park and pre-commit coming to Victor and pay the privilege of parking in a foreshore car park.
Thank you. That closes the debate, and we've got Councillor Glasbrook's alternative motion that council endorse the Esplanade car park to be utilised free of charge for the period of the Main Street Stage 4 project, 30th of May to the 24th of December. All those in favour? 2, 3, and those against? 2, 3. That gives me the casting vote. Listening to the debate, and I think there were some good arguments on all sides in relation to the debate. I'm concerned about the money that council will lose, and I am also cognizant of the main people that use the car park are the visitors who are used to, I think, as I said, paying for parking. And what we really want to do is assist the traders and contractors who are going to be impacted from the main street. So I'm voting against this motion. The motion will be lost. Casting vote of the mayor. So we come to recommendation 2, again, that council endorse issuing traders and contractors with parking permits free of charge for the Esplanade car park for the duration of the Main Street Stage 4 construction works. Moved by councillor Henderson. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think we've had all the discussion we need.
Councillor Schofield. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, Mayor, I think with previous debate, there was a bit of a mix-up in there, in the sense that, yes, the main users of the Esplanade car park, because it's a paid car park, are the visitors to town. But what we're trying to do, if this is all we've got on offer to help our Main Street traders, then it's pretty miserable soup that we're serving up, because it's the weekly, it's the time periods when getting the local people to know that Esplanade car park is for free. Why would they go there? And it's not doing anything to the cash flow for the traders. And this part here, when it comes to all these car parks that we're giving away, and I presume that, if I might ask this as a question, the 33 car parks that we're giving to the Causeway, that's from now until the end of August, is that, are we just reserving those for the Causeway and they're actually paying for those? Or are we
yes,
just giving them to them?
They're actually paying for those, Councillor Robertson.
Okay.
And the other thing that you may not be aware of is that this is not the only thing that we're doing for the traders. I know that Mark Prisabilla and his team are actually getting a whole suite of measures together that will assist the traders. This is one that's come to council because it requires a council resolution. And if any others require council resolutions, they will come to council as well. But there are a number of things that that Mark's looking at to assist the traders. So if you or any of the elected members have any ideas, by all means talk to him and his team, and they may be able to be included. So this is just one of a number of things that are going to assist.
Okay.
Is there any further questions or debate? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. So my understanding is 120 permits we are going to be issuing to the traders. So not everyone who works in Ocean Street and surrounds will get a permit, only one per businesses, or is that correct? 2 per businesses? Or depending on what their workforce is?
Through the Mayor, so what we're looking at doing at the moment is issuing essentially a permit to the business itself, but that may consist of a number of stickers in terms of their workers. So we would have to do a bit of consultation and liaison with the traders in terms of what their requirements are going forward. But the permit will be issued in the trader's name, and then we would need to do some consultation.
Thank you. Using the Esplanade car park to me seems a catch-22 because we're giving out free permits, but we're not having our visitors pay to use that car park on weekends, etc. I would like to move an amendment to this motion.
Sorry, you said that we're issuing free permits but not getting our visitors to pay?
I sound we're giving out permits where, but which will reduce the number of visitors who will pay for a car park. So
Okay.
I'm just it's just, to me, it's a bit of an oxymoron.
Yep.
So that's why I want to move an amendment to this motion.
Do you want an amendment, or would you want to start to see whether or not you can get a variation with councillor
Well, I
Henderson?
can't do a variation because I didn't move it. Well, that's the meeting procedures. I can do amendment.
Okay,
That's
if you'd
what I
like-
asked for.
Yep, all right, if you'd like to do an amendment.
Yeah, the amendment is to remove the words "for the Esplanade car park" and leave the rest as is.
The parking permits will need to actually specify what car park they are valid for. Have
All
you
right,
got,
okay.
um,
Well, I think the council endorses having traders and contractors with parking permits free of charge to use in the city of Victor Harbor for the duration of the Main Street Stage 4 construction works.
I don't think there's any other paid parking in the city of Victor
No,
Harbor.
no.
apart from
If
the-
you allow me to speak. We have time limits on parks where people can be fined if they park over that 2-hour or 3-hour period. This amendment is allowing businesses to use any car park in the city for their convenience for 8 hours a day for their business while it's open without any penalties. Instead of using the Esplanade car park, that will free up the Esplanade car park for visitors to pay to use that car park instead of using free car parks around the town. Let's our businesses use those car parks for the period while their business is open. So that's what the amendment is designed to do.
I might just ask Kathy to speak to that because there may be some issues there in relation to regulations or parking issues that we're not aware of.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, Councillor Kemp, it's a good question. And I think one of the pieces of feedback from traders was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, was that to keep the closer on-street parking available for visitors, to centralise all of the trader parking, if you like, in the Esplanade, and hence leave the other, what parking is there for visitors and customers. So it was about centralising the staff and the traders in one area.
Thank you very much for the, didn't realise that, Business Victor Harbor or the traders actually gave an input into what they wanted. But anyhow, this scheme was once used before last time and it wasn't taken up very much. So I'm not quite sure the traders will take it up again.
So we look for a seconder to your amendment
I'm
and see how we go.
I'm still talking to the motion, Mayor Jenkins.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think that, looking at this, I think this will give traders more opportunities to park where it's more convenient for them as also their staff, but also, it's just, to me, it's just means more flexibility and frees up the paid car park so we don't lose too much revenue. And I think customers will work their way around the car parks now like they do on a current day. When car parks are full, they'll park and walk to a shop, etc. So doing it that way shouldn't interfere too much. So I think the amendment is a sound one in the context that it actually gives flexibility and, for everybody. And all it needs is just a permit saying that they're free to park here for X hours.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Robertson. There's no debate. Oh, is there debate? Sorry. If you've talked to the original motion, there's no debate on the amendment as far as I recall.
Point of order, I believe that you can, under our meeting procedures, we can, as you've spoken to the original motion, you can debate an amendment.
I'll just double check that. Thank you. So the member can move or second an amendment unless they have been the mover and seconder of the original motion, which Councillor Robertson and Councillor Kemp are not. The person who moves or second the amendment, and if they choose so speaks to it, will have taken to have spoken to the motion to which the amendment relates. So Councillor Kemp and Councillor Robertson, if this amendment is lost, you have spoken to the original motion. Okay. Councillor Robertson, did you want to speak to the amendment? No. In that case, I will move the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? And those against? That amendment is lost.
Call of division, thank you.
Yep. All those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. Councillor Robertson and Councillor Kemp? Those against the amendment? Councillor Mann? Councillor Glasbrook? Councillor Henderson and Councillor Schofield? That amendment was lost. Somebody's got their telephone on, if they could turn that off, please. We now go back to the original motion. That was moved by, moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Does anybody other than Councillor Kemp or Councillor Robertson wish to speak to that? In that case, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you. And that is the end of the special council meeting tonight. Thank you very much to everybody for attending and for your input. There's some really great discussion on both of those really important items. And as I said, if you've got any ideas about how we can help the Main Street traders, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either Graham or Mark, and they can incorporate your ideas into what they're doing. Thank you very much, and thank you for the gallery for taking the time to come and listen to us. It's appreciated.